Well, welcome to this episode of Tech Diva Success Podcast. Again, making you 1% better, but you are going to get a lot better today, extraordinarily better, because we are here with Simone Knego. She is the best-selling author of The Extraordinary Unordinary You. She obviously is a speaker on that, an entrepreneur, a mother to 6. That's right, I said 6. Multicultural children. She is a bold leader. She's going to have her personality in full effect on this show, which I'm really excited about. She has a fearless attitude and she is a force for good, which is what our world needs more of. She's going to share her journey of her life. She has a very cool life experience, has gone through a lot of things. She adopted 3 of her 6 children in foreign countries. She's climbed Mount Kilimanjaro to raise cancer awareness and so many other things that she's going to share with our audience, as well as powerful lessons for our listeners out there on what really matters, and topping it off with the fact that it's the little things we do every day that make the most difference. So, Simone, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself that I didn't hit, just so that our listeners can get to know you?
I'll tell you a little bit about my professional life. I started my career in accounting. I went to school and have both a bachelor's and a master in accounting, and I'm a CPA. And since then, I've changed my mind multiple times trying to figure out where I wanted to be, where I was supposed to be. It's more of where I wanted to be that I needed to figure out as an author and speaker. And this is absolutely what I love to do.
And what do you love most about it?
Human connection. I think it's so important to share our stories. I think that piece, that's what connects us. I was reading an article the other day about how the brain responds to stories. And it's almost as if you are there. When you're listening to a story, your brain responds in the same way as if you were actually experiencing it for yourself. And I just think stories are so powerful. And it's so important for us to share what we're going through, the good, the bad, the ugly, the sad, all of it, because that's what connects us.
And how did you weave these stories into your book?
I with 6 kids and a husband, I have endless material. And I really wanted to weave in all kinds of stories, not just the shiny moments. Those are great, but I think it's really important to show our authentic self, which includes the tough times as well. So, I tell kind of some, there's sad stories, there's ridiculous stories, like the time we came home from a trip and I had to take my son to therapy, and we got into the van and I was like, oh my gosh, I know it's the moving trash can, but it looks like there was popcorn everywhere. And I knew that I had kind of cleaned it before we left. And so I was like, why is there popcorn everywhere? So we're backing out of the garage. I look back again and I'm like, oh, that's not popcorn. Noah, get out of the car. Get out of the car. And he was like, what? I'm like, get out of the car. And so he gets out of the car and I look in through, his door, and there's pieces of foam from inside the seats everywhere. A rat or two, 17, 20, I don't know, made a home in there, chewed on every seat in the car. And there was rat poop everywhere. It was probably one of the most disgusting things. And I tell the story because, again, we're human, like things happen every day. And the insurance company actually totaled the car. And that's just an example.
Well, that is crazy. Like, I can't even imagine trying to process what is happening. Well, in all your experiences, I'm sure you've learned many that can help make people better. And even though we are all ordinary people, we're all extraordinary in our potential and in our lives and what we can do. So with that, do you want to maybe pivot to talk about some things that can help our tech divas out there become a little bit better or reflect upon their lives?
Absolutely. I struggled for a long time to try to figure out what I wanted. For a long time, it was what other people wanted me to be or do. And I realized that what was important was what I wanted. I was constantly trying to change things in my life. Again, went through many different jobs, careers, figuring out where I wanted to be. And what I finally realized is that and this was a turning point for me because I struggled for so long, was that we don't need to change who we are. We need to change the way we see ourselves, and we need to not be so hard on ourselves all of the time. When I look back at all of the different career choices I made, I think for a long time I really saw them as failures when I was switching from one thing to the next because I couldn't figure myself out. And I look back now and say it's okay to change our minds, that it's not a failure. It's just part of our journey. And the ultimate goal is realizing who we are, what we really want to do. So when I look back, I always say, just don't be so hard on yourself.
Really interesting to think about, because it's almost like sometimes we're so worried about the destination that we don't realize that life is the journey getting to the destination. When you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro,
Mm.
one, that's an amazing thing to do for good. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that. But what else did you learn that it's a life lesson from your time on the mountain about really finding success in your venture to climb the mountain that we could kind of bring back?
The choice to climb that mountain actually was one of those things that kind of, I want to say, fell in my lap. It wasn't a bucket list item. I had never climbed anything before. Yes, I'd gone camping, but yeah, that was about it. And my husband was asked to do it, and he said, "No, thank you. Call Simone." And they called me, and I said, "Absolutely. I think I want to do this." And as soon as I committed, I stuck with it. I really worked really hard. I exercised constantly, which is not in my nature, and I really got myself ready for it mentally and physically. And yes, I had lots of people say to me, not my friends, my close friends were like, "Oh, this is so cool." But I had a lot of people say to me, "You really think you're going to make it to the top?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm going to make it to the top." So when we did make it to the top, that was really kind of the biggest lesson for me. I mean, there were many lessons along the way climbing with this amazing group of people, but really the getting rid of the self-doubt, realizing that when I am determined to do something and I really put in the hard work behind it, it's not just setting a goal, but it's putting in the work with it, then I feel like I can truly accomplish it. Trust me, there's still things like if I say I want to be an astronaut, okay, that's really not going to happen for me. But, there's definitely, I mean, this is not an easy goal, and I accomplished it. And again, this wasn't something that I would have ever imagined I could do. So really looking back is that, not limiting myself and not doubting and putting in the work behind what needed to be done.
Well, kudos to you for accomplishing that. And for that lesson, that's so valuable, especially as women in tech. Sometimes we doubt our capabilities. Sometimes we call it imposter syndrome, feeling like you're in a position, kind of faking it till you're making it. But that's what life is. Life is about stepping into something, learning and growing. And you did that through climbing. And that's a really great testament to it. And you spoke earlier about connecting with other people. So I'd like to ask you this, because it seems like you've probably connected with a lot of people as you've shared about your book, your journey, even just having 6 kids, all the people that surround your family in life. What is one of your things that you've seen common in some of the most outstanding people? When you think of your favorite people, the most successful, the strongest, the people that you look up to in your life, is there a certain trait or way that you've interacted with them that really stands out, that makes you aspire to be more, or something that you find in those people that's in common?
Yeah, there's a few actually, but the main one is really when they ask you a question, they really want to know the answer. They're active listening. They don't ask you because they have to. They ask you because they want to know. They want that connection piece. And I think it's so important for us to remember that, because sometimes we go through our lives with our heads down and just, again, getting from point A to point B. And it's so important to realize that these conversations, whether it's with your neighbor as you go out to get your mail, I have been guilty many times of being like, are they still out there? Okay, let me run real quick and get my stuff so I can get back in the house, and that's not how we need to live our lives. It's like, let's take the moments and really be able to share kindness and empathy. And, so when I look at people that I truly look up to, it's really how they interact with other people. They really, they care. They ask the question because they want to know, and they want to spend the time in the conversation, not just getting to the end of it.
So speaking of connections, COVID has not done us any favors
Mm.
in maintaining the human connection that I know people like you and myself thrive on. So how have you pivoted, being such a connection driven person outside of your family, where you have so many great connections, to stay engaged with others at this time? And what tips do you have?
So Zoom is the connector right now. And for me, it's really reaching out even when I don't want to get on another Zoom call, because as soon as I do and I see people's faces and I hear their voices, I feel that connection. And no, it's not the same, but it is what it is for right now. And I really set the time aside, especially with my friends, because we can get lost up in our days and never make those connections. And so I really set time. My friends really set time to say, okay, Friday at 4:30, grab a glass of wine. We're getting on Zoom. And I'm like, oh, yes, I'm getting on Zoom. And so I look at it as something that this is kind of where we are right now. And I appreciate that, because thank goodness we have this, because otherwise it would be so, so difficult. I mean, imagine in places where they don't have this, that they're yearning for that connection. So I'm thankful for the little things, and one of those little things is this interaction that I get to have over a camera.
I agree. I think I've been so grateful. I probably could do a better job. I think part of me says how lucky I am to be able to connect with women like you through the podcast and through the show, because I get to see you. I get to talk about things that are energizing, that always challenge me to be better. But then I think about how I haven't done the greatest job with some of my friends, where it is easier and more connecting to get on Zoom. I do have a couple that I FaceTime all the time, which is great. But I think extending that, now that we're coming into longer time periods of the pandemic, is something I can do better. So I think that's a takeaway for our listeners out there. How are you challenging yourself to widen your circle using technology, not just for work, to get in and to handle your business? I think that's the challenge, right? Okay, going beyond just getting your work done on Zoom. And that's part of the reason I think we're exhausted, right? Because you're like, another Zoom, we do get burnout. But I think the connection, like you said, is really valuable.
Honestly, I love the podcast piece because I get to meet so many people and learn so many different things. But then when you get back on a Zoom with your friends, it's completely different. It's kind of like, wow, okay, this is where I want to be right now. And that's been so important to me.
Absolutely. And you've done a lot. You've written books, you have 6 children, you've traveled, you've really challenged yourself to live life. And congratulations on that. As you've done it, what has kept you going to do more, to keep writing books and inspiring people and being on podcasts? What is that fuel in your tank that keeps you doing more?
So for a long time, the fuel was trying to figure out who I was, who I wanted to be, or who I was. And now that I've really figured that piece out, it's realizing the difference I can make. Me, ordinary me. I think we don't give ourselves enough credit. I didn't for many years, but really understanding that, yes, ordinary me also is completely unordinary, right? We're all unique. We are all unique, and we all have these extraordinary moments. And we need to realize that those moments really help other people when we share what we're doing, when we share what we're going through. And for me, that's what keeps me going. When I have one person say to me, wow, that story really impacted me, or wow, I never thought about it like that before. So it's that one person that I'm trying to reach that really keeps me moving forward. I don't need to change the entire world. That would be amazing. But changing my piece of the world, one person, just one person, that's what keeps me going.
I really respect that, because that's my same mentality with this show. One life, one listen, one person who really takes this and says, wow, that makes me want to reach out to someone. And then it's a butterfly effect of that. Well, what is the biggest thing that you wish someone told you? Maybe a younger self, or your biggest piece of advice looking back?
It really goes back to not being so hard on ourselves. I was so hard on myself. In high school, I left high school at 17 to go to college. I went early admission because I didn't feel like I fit in. There's so many parts to it, but I wish someone would have said to me, like, it's okay to change your mind about things. I say it to my kids all the time. When we decide at 18 years old, when we go to college, okay, this is what I'm going to be for the rest of my life. Like, I can barely match my socks, right? Like, so to decide what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, it's hard. So I think having someone say to me that it's okay to change your mind and it's okay to change your mind again, I think that would have really, really, really been helpful for me as a teen.
It's incredible how our society puts so much stock into this one decision. And sometimes those decisions are influenced by people wanting the best for you, but not what your true north is,
Mhm.
which is really key. Well, we're coming kind of towards the end of the episode. So I want to get your last words of wisdom and anything else that you want to share with our tech divas from your life experience that can help make us better. So with that, is there any last call here for wonderful knowledge that you can share?
For me, it just goes back to when I go through my life, it's really understanding that we don't need to change who we are. We really just need to change the way we see ourselves, that we need to give ourselves more credit and understand that the little things we do every day have a huge impact. Sometimes we don't realize it, cooking dinner for our kids, letting someone jump in front of you in line when you're driving. Like, all of these things can make or break someone's day. Honestly, I've seen it, I've experienced it, has made, broken my days before, when I'm like, okay, take a step back, have some patience, like, it's going to be okay, this is really not a big deal. um I mean, that's really it for me, that I really think, especially as women, I look at my mother. I'll give you a real quick story. She grew up in rural Pennsylvania, on a farm. Her mom had a sixth grade education. Her dad worked in the coal mines in a local brewery, and she knew she wanted to be educated. She was the youngest of three kids, and she worked for another family, saved up her money. She got into the University of Pittsburgh. And while in college, she worked three jobs. She got into medical school. She was one of five women in her medical school class out of 120 people. And she just persevered. She didn't matter what anybody else said to her. She knew this is what she wanted, and she worked really hard. And I think that we need to give ourselves credit to understand that we are capable of doing amazing things, but we have to believe in ourselves.
And that is it, ladies. That is the mindset that we can all have, is believing in ourselves, eliminating that self-doubt, improving our self-talk, and climbing our own mountains of our lives with that kind of positive attitude. And I really appreciate that. If people have connected with you and want to read more about your experience from your book or connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
You can go to my website, SimoneKnego.com. It's Knego. I know it's a tough one, but I am the only one in the world. So even if you spell it wrong, I think you'll find me. But that's the best way. And I'd love to hear from you. If you read my book, if you have a comment, shoot me an email. I would love to hear from you.
Well, again, thanks for coming on the show. If you've changed one life, if you've given one perspective, that's all we can do. And I really take away from this your passion for living life and not being afraid to live life. And I think that that's what we're all here to do. So thank you for doing that with me and talking about your experience and sharing that with our tech divas out there. I really appreciate you, Simone.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me here today. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.